Aloha, everyone. Welcome back to the negotiation table. My name is Wincy Hong. I'm the communication specialist here at HGEA. And with us today, we have Speaker of the House, Scott Saiki.
Hi,
Hello.
Wincy. Thanks for inviting me today.
Awesome. Thanks for making time for us. Before we dive into this month's conversation, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode like this. All right, so let's dive in. House Speaker Scott Saiki has been a longtime champion for labor, and he's a friend of ours here at HGEA. He was first elected to the State House in 1994, and in 2018, he became the House Speaker. He's been on the forefront of equal pay for equal work, gender equality, worker rights, affordable housing, homelessness, and environmental protection. So, wow, thank you. HGA is proud to endorse Speaker Saiki again as he faces a tough fight this primary election for his House District 25 seat. Okay, so let's dive into the questions here. We're right on the heels of the end of the legislative session, and temporary hazard pay has been on the minds of many state and county workers. So, this session, the legislature approved $450 million to cover hazard pay settlements for HGEA members. So, why was it important for you and your colleagues to make this happen?
Sure, Wincy. So, funding the hazard pay awards was a really important priority for the legislature this year. And it was an acknowledgement to those who are working within state government for all of their work during the COVID-19 pandemic. Sometimes members of the public who are not a part of the state workforce, take for granted the work that is done by public servants. During the pandemic, state workers and county workers as well were not always in a position where they could be separate themselves from what was happening during the pandemic. They were still at work, they were still in the field, they were still exposed to other members of the public, and they didn't really have a choice in those situations. So the hazard pay award was just again was an acknowledgement of what workers experienced, what they were exposed to during the pandemic, the risk that they basically took, not just for their own personal health, but also the health of people who lived with them and who they saw every day during that shutdown period.
Yes, definitely. And lawmakers also passed a bill that would allow public sector unions to proceed to arbitration for the repricing of positions. Historically, the labor unions really struggled to get cooperation from employers to review compensation and make it competitive across government. So, can you talk a bit about why this was a priority for you?
Yeah, so repricing is a really important issue. It's kind of like an under the radar issue, but it's really important not just for those who are working in government, but for those who want to make sure that government is able to provide the kinds of services that the public expects from us. And this is one of my themes in serving as speaker is that we want to modernize state government because we need to really evaluate the kinds of positions that we have in state government and whether or not the compensation levels are appropriate and whether they are basically equivalent to private sector compensation packages. Repricing is important because it allows us to really give us an opportunity to restructure government to see how we can better kind of synchronize positions with the kinds of programs that we have available to the public.
Definitely. And that actually leads me to my next question, which pertains to the vacancy rates that we've been seeing. So, here at HGEA, we've been talking a lot about the growing vacancy crisis in government. It seems like there are more and more departments struggling to fill upwards of 40% of their positions. So, with workers opting for jobs in the private sector over civil service. What solutions have you and your colleagues been looking at to address this problem?
Yeah, so the vacancy rate is another issue that's kind of under the radar, but it's an issue that's been growing over the years, and it's really time for not just the legislature, but also for the administration to take a look at what is happening and what's the cause of this vacancy rate. The bottom line is that we need to make sure that our state positions are modernize so that we can avoid vacancy rates. I'm not sure if a lot of these positions are obsolete. If they are, then we should consider eliminating them and maybe consolidating positions or restructuring positions so that we can avoid these rates. Because whenever you have large vacancy numbers, it just really affects our ability to provide services to the general public. There needs to be a comprehensive evaluation of what is happening with vacancy rates. The federal government just recently, in the Social Security program, just recently undertook an evaluation of job classifications within the federal system and eliminated obsolete positions. So I think that needs to be done as well on the state level.
It used to be that government jobs were highly sought after, not anymore. How can government be competitive again with the private sector? And are there more systemic reforms government should consider, especially in the state's antiquated job classification system and sluggish hiring process?
I get it. I think there was a time when it was important for the state government to consolidate the hiring procedure here in one department. I'm not sure if that's really the most effective way to hire people in this day and age, when you have people applying for jobs who don't want to wait months and months and months to hear back from a potential employer. As we know, people are just going to move on at some point. They're not going to just keep waiting. So it's really important for us to streamline that procedure. Department should maybe have the ability and the flexibility to do more direct hiring at their levels. It's really time for us to, again, go back to this theme of how do we modernize government to make it better. And the hiring process, I think, falls into that category.
Moving away from now the hiring process and vacancy issue, let's talk about housing affordability. So recently, condo owners have been sounding the alarm about skyrocketing insurance premiums, with some reporting their deductibles doubling over the previous year. So you've been working with the government and banking executives to look for a solution. Could you talk a little bit about what solutions are possible to stabilize these costs?
Sure. So, what happened was this past November, before we started our legislative session in January, some people came to see me and they said, Scott, there's a problem here with property insurance rates. They're just increasing exponentially, especially for condo buildings, for high-rise condo residential buildings. So I started to meet with them, and we realized, we learned what was happening. Property insurance rates are increasing as a result of climate change and natural disaster risk. And what is happening in Hawaii is not unique to Hawaii. It's happening throughout the United States. So basically all of the states are experiencing property insurance increases as well. And especially the coastal states that are more exposed to natural disaster risk, like Florida, the Louisiana, California, all of the West Coast states, they're all experiencing this. So we formed a group to work on some legislation. There was a proposal to make an attempt to provide temporary stopgap coverage for condo buildings. There are basically only 3 property insurers for condo buildings. One of those insurers has capped the amount of coverage available to buildings. They've also considered stopping issuing policies for condo buildings. So this has led to an increase in prices here. Our proposal was basically to use 2 existing funds to help to capitalize them so that they could provide a layer of insurance coverage for condo buildings that are having difficulty getting coverage on their own. We were also warned in November that this situation would extend outside of condo buildings to single-family residences, and that's exactly what's happening now, because townhomes are now affected by property insurance increases, and we're also hearing cases of single-family homes, especially homes that are in fire zones. The legislature should really look at how we can provide some temporary stopgap coverage for homeowners.
Definitely. like you said, right, it's not only condo owners, but also other homeowners as well. So you've been looking for ways to get new affordable housing developments online quicker to keep up with the growing demand across the state. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
In prior years, we've always focused on funding housing development, whether it was for housing infrastructure or actual housing projects. But this year we took a different tact and we addressed zoning, which is normally a county issue. But we wanted to take on zoning because we felt that it was important for us to kind of prompt the counties to make their approval process more efficient when it comes to housing development. So we basically what we did was we set a state policy that would allow for the development of 2 ADUs on residential properties. We did not diminish county home rule. Counties still have the authority to set the standards for where these ADUs can be built. The counties would still retain the authority to approve and deny permits for these kinds of developments. But we just really felt like we needed to go in there and to help streamline that process, that approval process for ADUs. And ADUs, by the way, are smaller units. They're not large dwellings. They're smaller units. We are going to give the counties a couple of years to authorize their own procedures, their own standards for these kinds of developments. So there is an opportunity for the counties to really weigh in and set the standards for what can and cannot be built under this new state law.
Speaker, HGEA is backing you again as we face another election cycle against a tough opponent. As we close out this episode, we wanted to let you make a final pitch to why residents in your district should join us in supporting you.
Sure. So, I think the theme of our campaign this year is action. And that's exactly what, I have been able to do working with my House colleagues. We have taken action in so many areas over the years that I really believe will improve the quality of life for people in Hawaii. We have enacted the largest state income tax cut in history. We cut taxes for medical professionals who provide Medicare services for seniors. We have acted on civil rights legislation, women's reproductive rights, environmental and energy issues. We've also worked on housing reform. So we have really, really worked hard to address the cost of living and the quality of life for Hawaii residents, and even with public workers. We have always stood up for workers, those in our state workforce, who, on a day-to-day basis are providing important services for the entire public. And I wanted to emphasize also that, a few years ago, and this kind of goes back to the question about vacancies, where sometimes it's really easy for people to blame state workers when something goes wrong, or to use state workers whenever there's a shortfall in our state budget. A few years ago, when we're anticipating a budget shortfall, Governor Ige proposed to furlough state workers. And after he made that announcement, the Senate president and I issued a statement basically opposing the furloughs. And as a result, the governor, backed down on that. But that's just an example of, action that we have taken in the House, working with the Senate to just stand up for people in our community, in our state, and in our state workforce.
I just want to mahalo to you, Speaker Saiki, for joining us today. We appreciate you taking time to share your ideas with us and all that you do for civil service employees. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So join us in the conversation, folks. In the comments, let us know what you think about the issues we discussed today. And are you concerned about the growing vacancy crisis in government? Is your family dealing with housing affordability? And for more content like this, don't forget to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. We can't wait to see you back here next month at the negotiation table. But for now, see you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.